Are we as Jesus followers truly teachable to any new ideas or concepts we've learned from the Bible, from other believers, or in church? There's an interesting contrast in John 8 between verse 2 and 3, where verse 2 reads, "All the people came to him, and he sat down and taught them." And then the unteachable reaction of the scribes and Pharisees in verse 3. The ordinary people came to be taught. On the other hand, the religious leaders used the occasion to test Jesus. They wanted to see if he would do what Old Testament law required and then approve of the woman being stoned to death. Jesus, however, knew their hearts, and he said, "Let him who is without sin among you be the first to throw a stone at her." Caught in their own trap, the religious leaders slowly dispersed until only Jesus and the woman were left. The inability to grasp new concepts is a hallmark of those who are not teachable. So Jesus said to the Jews who had believed him, "If you abide in my word, you truly are my disciples, and you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free." These people believed Jesus up to the point of understanding that they could be slaves to sin. At that point, the fact that they were Abraham's descendant got in the way of their understanding the new teaching that Jesus was sharing. They could be slaves to sin even though politically they were free. The Jewish leaders at the time of Jesus rejected new teachings, even though the book of Isaiah clearly said that God would do a new thing. Jesus' comment in verse 58, "Truly, truly, I say to you, before Abraham was, I am," sent the Jewish leaders into a murderous rage. If there had been any uncertainty about Jesus' identity in other passages where he said, "I am," there was no confusion here. In using the present tense, "I am," in speaking of existence before Abraham, Jesus was claiming a transcendence over time that could only be true of God. We live in an age of options. We like multiple choices. But when dealing with God, he gives us only one choice: believe and follow Jesus. If you do not, you reject his teachings and go the way of the Pharisees and the world. Which will you choose? Let's have some questions about chapter 8. But before we begin, please note that we like to read a question, put it on the screen where someone in your group or yourself can pause the video and take a few moments to discuss the question together. Then hit play again and move on to the next one. Our first question deals with the idea of how many people may or may not receive Christ's messages. What were some of the signs that the Pharisees were unteachable? What about signs that others presented at that time that were teachable? Question number 2. Most of us tend to ebb and flow between being teachable and being resistant to teaching. Describe a time in your life when you were teachable and a time when you were unteachable. And on to our last question. Being unteachable is an issue in life that often creates blind spots for us. Are you willing to walk with other believers in the way that Jesus discusses in Matthew 18, 15 through 17? Not just pointing out others' blind spots, but having yours pointed out as well? How do you live out those verses?